Teachers, what insane behind-the-scenes drama did you have to hide from students? In my mid-20s, I got my first job at a Title I elementary school as an art teacher. I was super excited to begin my teaching career. However, I was so far into La La Land that I didn't notice any of the warning signs. A week before school started, I had contacted the school office and principal to ask about getting my keys and badge. I needed them to prepare for the upcoming school year. I got no response and no answer from either. So I called the district office and asked when and where I could pick up my keys and badge. 2 days before school started, I got an email from my admin saying I should have been more patient and not have contacted the district office. When I finally got everything and was able to get into my room, I was horrified by how much I had to get done. Apparently, they had used my room as storage, so it was loaded with tables, desks, filing cabinets and 100 chairs stacked on top of each other. The second red flag came on the first day of classes. I hadn't been informed of what the schedules were, so I couldn't tell which days I saw certain classes and when. Once again, I emailed my principal, asking what the schedule looked like and if there was a digital document I could print out. I got an email back a few minutes later telling me to stop pressuring and bullying her. I replied, sorry if I was making her feel that way, but it would be nice to know what classes I had and when. Then comes the third flag. Not 10 minutes after school started, I finally got my schedule where I found out I had 2 classes at the same time. I had 46 kids in one classroom by myself. Moreover, I had 7 45-minute periods a day and saw every class every day of the week, with only a 30-minute lunch. I asked my principal if there was any way we could adjust the schedule so I had time to plan and get the classroom ready for the next class. I told her I didn't want to lose valuable instruction time getting things ready as the new class was coming in. Instead of helping me, she comes to my room and yells at me with a class waiting outside, saying it is your first year teaching. You don't know what you need and need to just deal with it. Well, I decided not to just deal with it and I read the teacher's contract for the district. Come to find out, we had a section about classroom size. It said that if you had a class over 30 students, you get to have an educational assistant to help you with the class. I brought this up with my principal after a month and a half of struggling. I was denied and told there was no money in the budget. They told me to make do without it or quit. Mind you, I am stubborn and determined to make things work with what little I have. But things were rough. In order to do the bare minimum for my job, I had to be at the school from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. on weekdays. On top of that, I then also had to use my weekend time to continue to plan and grade. When it came time for my first teacher evaluation, I was dreading it. However, I got all satisfactory marks from my principal. I was shocked. Little did I know this was a plan she had all along. A few more weeks passed, and I've had it. I talked with our union about the double classes and said it's not sustainable. I told them a classroom my size can't safely fit more than 30 students, let alone 46 students. They said they would handle it, but a few more weeks go by, and nothing. It's now the week of Thanksgiving, and conferences are over. I didn't have to worry about anything for 2 days, so I decided to go to a potluck dinner with some old friends of mine. Here is the best part, and maybe the part that saved my career and even maybe my sanity. I was talking with one of my old acquaintances and his new husband about the teaching job I landed and how the school year was going. I let it slip that even though my students were amazing and had such creative minds, it was frustrating to me how spread thin I was. I told him how I don't have the time to give my students the help they deserve because with 2 classes at once, it's hard to get around to everyone in just 45 minutes. I noticed the husband raise his eyebrow and asked me what school I worked at. So I told him. What harm could it do? I found out the next Monday when the principal stormed into my room at 8:05 a.m. to scream and yell at me, threatening to fire me and make sure I never work in education again. I was shocked and confused at the time. However, later that week we had a staff meeting. We talked about a change in the schedule and how only one class would be in my class at a time for an hour now. I would only see each class twice a week instead of all 5 days. It was magical. The kids were happier and I was calmer. I was able to help each individual student if they needed it and could even plan enough throughout the day so I could leave at 4 p.m. Sad to say, my happiness didn't last forever. I noticed my principal stalking my room and coming in nonstop to observe me. It was awkward. I then had a few of my very extroverted students come in quietly and unable to focus on work. When I asked them if everything was okay, they would burst into tears and say, I don't want you to go. Being confused, my response was always, oh, I have absolutely no intentions of going anywhere. You are all the best students a teacher could ever ask for. This would cheer them up for a while, but then they would come in the next week upset again. It all clicked on the day before we left for Christmas break. My principal came into my room with one of her minions, who was the building union representative. They told me I was being put on a teacher support plan. This plan was to evaluate whether or not my contract with the district would be up for renewal at the end of the school year. I was shocked. My union rep just snickered and walked away giggling with our admin. I felt sick and abused, unable to feel any emotion. It wasn't until I got home and read what this plan detailed that I saw red. I had hit my breaking point. This is when I started to formulate a plan of revenge. Some important things to note. Our principal liked to come into school whenever they felt like it. She would be there anywhere from 7:45 a.m. to as late as 9:30 a.m. and once showed up at noon without telling anyone. I also knew that she had kept renewing a certain after-school care contractor that wasn't free to families. This was despite the fact that the school got money from the district to offer it for free. I also knew that this person running the after-school care was dating and living with our principal. So during winter break, my acquaintance and his husband called and asked if I was free to get drinks over the holidays. There, the new husband asked if things were better after he had talked about the double classes. I asked, what do you mean you talked to my principal? How do you know her? Oh, You didn't know? I'm the supervising administrator for that cohort of schools. He was her boss. My jaw dropped, and I started to hyperventilate. The husband was startled and asked what was wrong. I told him everything. How she yelled and threatened to get me fired, how she put me on this support plan, and how she just kept observing my class without notifying me. His face went from a concerned look to a surprised Pikachu face to red with anger. He told me, I always had a bad vibe from her, and wondered why there were always so many new teachers at that school every year. What else can you tell me about what's going on? I hesitated, but my acquaintance told me not to worry, he was on my side. So I told him everything I knew. They both just sat there awestruck. After the break was over, I dreaded coming back to my class, but I didn't want to miss seeing my students. So I pushed on. While walking in the hall, a few of my students ran up and gave me the biggest, longest hug ever, saying, "You're here. You're here." I responded, "Of course, I'm here. I wouldn't leave the best students ever, now would I? But the principal said you were going to leave us because you didn't want to be here, and we should give you trouble before you left." Trying to hold my rage, I responded, "Oh, maybe she was talking about how I was leaving to visit family over the break? No need to worry, I'm still here. This wretched woman tried to purposely make kids misbehave in my class to write me up for not having good rapport with my students." I was beyond livid. This is when I made my move. So the next time I had class with that student, I asked them if they could make a comic book of the conversation they had with my principal when she told them I was leaving. And make an ending they wanted. Then, I contacted my new best friend, the supervising administrator. I told him, as per my contract, I wanted another admin to accompany my principal's teacher support observations. And I wanted it to be him. He said absolutely. But not to tell my principal just yet. The first day of my observation comes, and she walks in without anything to take any sort of notes, looking proud of herself like she is about to get away with firing me. She is shocked and confused when her boss walks in with a laptop and sits next to her. He's typing notes about how I'm doing while she stumbles around and comes to ask me for a notepad to take notes. I tell her, I don't have an extra notepad, but I do have some scrap poster paper. I hope you can be better prepared for the next observation so as to not disrupt my class and take time away from their instructional time. Her boss just smirked. After that, I was now calling my new best friend whenever she was late getting to school, and he would do a random stop by if he was close. So he was able to document that she was not showing up to work on time and not submitting the paperwork to have it taken out of her leave minutes. Overall, he and other members of HR visited her at least 2 times a week for a solid month. She was never there. For the final phase of my revenge, I wanted to get the parents on board. I started talking to parents who seemed to always be late picking up their students. I asked about it, and they said it was hard to get there on time and they often had to leave work early. When I told them about our aftercare, they told me that it cost too much for them. I then informed them that since we are a Title I school, after-school care was supposed to be free and paid for by the district. I gave them flyers I made up with the website to fill out the forms. This made word spread around to parents which were paying the contractors directly despite the fact that it was supposed to be free. And boy, was that a fun PTA meeting to go to. I also made sure the principal knew it was me who informed the parents about that free after-school care program. After this, there were countless investigations at our school. Head administration from the central office stopped by, auditors, and our union finally got involved and tried to play the heroes and victims in this incident. Soon after, my new best friend made sure that my teacher support plan was taken off my teaching record, and my principal was not allowed to do my second-term evaluations, nor was she allowed to do any informal observations. The after-school care contractor was fired and taken over by one recommended by the district. And my students were making amazing strides in their posters and comics. At the end of the year, when we were getting our assignments for the next year, my principal made one last attempt to get me to leave and told me, "Our budget doesn't have the funds for an art teacher next year, so you might want to seek employment elsewhere." I laughed in her face and said, "Nice try, my position is paid for by a state bond and isn't affected by your budget from the district. If there isn't anything else, I'll be leaving now," and walked out. I could hear her slam her desk and swear up a storm as I closed the door. At the end of the year, I had one student share his comic book about how the principal told him to give me trouble in class at our school's talent show. This left the already pissed off parents even more pissed that an adult would tell a child to act in such a way. I even think she had a shoe thrown at her when she ran on stage to stop him from finishing his comic. To no one's surprise, on the last day of school, she announced on the intercom, she would be resigning from our school to move to a different position where she was needed. She finished off by saying she would miss almost all of us. I came to find out 2 years later that she had to get a job out of the district, an hour's drive away, to get another admin job. She only stayed for a year, and then had to step down to teaching English at a different school in another district the next year. And for those of you wondering how my student's comic book ended, well, the art hero rallied the students against the angry principal to make her see the errors of her ways, but the angry principal could not become happy. So she left, and the power of happiness filled the school once again.